My name's Kat, I've got autism and I've got ADHD, and I have historically been shit with money. But I have finally found a system that works for me and doesn't make me feel like I'm going insane. Disclaimer, all of this is stuff that works for me. A lot of this is going to sound like an ad for Monzo because that's kind of been the saving grace for me personally. This is not sponsored by Monzo, and Monzo do not know I'm making this video. I am getting no money from anyone for talking about Monzo this much. However, their pot system is what has saved my financial life, basically. So first things first, if you didn't know already, being shit with money basically is a trait of ADHD. It is a spin-off of the if I can't see it, it's not there sort of syndrome. I do not have the quotes or the science or anything like that behind it. However, I do work in special education and have done for about 7 years now. The most common way of banking does not work for people with ADHD. So it's taken me a hot minute. I have been in a lot of debt. I have worked to pull myself out of that debt. I am lucky enough that I have had people in my life that could pull me out of that debt and help me onto my feet again. And I am in a much more stable place. I am not in a perfect place, but I am in a place where I have a system that works. And if I stumble, I don't make a horrendous error. I don't have horrendous consequences. I just have small consequences that often change week to week rather than being life altering. And for me, it starts with Monzo. So if you're not familiar with Monzo, Monzo is an online bank. They don't have any physical stores in the UK, and they have a system of pots. So you have your main account like you would normally, but you can also have a series of virtual pots. If you pay extra, I believe I pay £3 a month for extra plan. There is also a plan for £7 a month. I couldn't tell you what the differences were off the top of my head, but the £3 plan works for me. You can assign a number of virtual cards to your pots. So what this means is that I have my main dumping zone where all my money lives. And then I think I have 5 pots, which are separate. Now, these are not savings pots. These are day-to-day pots. Savings pots are a whole other thing. That also helps me. I have one for food. I have one for transport. I have one for bills that are monthly. I have one for annual bills. And then I have one for a specific thing that I'm saving up for. Maybe it's a trip. Maybe I know I'm going to a goth market soon and probably going to drop a lot of cash. But just like something that I know I'm going to end up spending a lot of money for. What it means is that when all of my money on payday comes into my main account, I can move that money across into various pots. I can, for example, with my transport pot, I know I spend about £110 a month on transport. I don't drive, so that's all bus money. I can put that in my pot, and I have a card assigned to that pot that is on my Google Wallet. That means when I get on a bus, I can just tap the card that is directly linked to my transport wallet, and I can see very clearly how much is left of that budget, how much I've maybe gone over, how much I'm under, how much I might be able to save towards the next month. But it's a way of separating out my money into its individual budgets, because if you lump me with £1,700, which is the minimum I get paid every month, I can't mentally work out, right, how much of that do I need to not touch for bills? How much of that do I not need to touch for savings? How much do I have to keep there for food, for transport? I can't hold all that in my head. I think it's my autism that means I'm not very good with abstract concepts, which means that any numbers over 100 I can't quantify in my head. I can quantify 100, but if we're talking 200, 300, 400, I can't do the maths automatically enough to know, right, I've got £500 left in the bank, but I've got this one coming out and this payment coming out and this payment coming out. That means that actually I've only got, 200 of that left. I can't do that maths quick enough, and I can't quantify numbers over 100 well enough that money means something. So it means I end up spending a lot more than I should and gets me into debt really, really quickly. So being able to separate out my different budgets that are important into pots, the way that Monzo lets you do it, is fantastic. And the fact that they have virtual cards where I can pay directly from that pot is even better. So I have a card for food, I have a card for transport, and I have a card for monthly bills. For most bills that aren't direct debits, you can just put in the details of that virtual card when you're putting your payment details in. So the money comes straight out of that pot. You just need to make sure that there's enough money in there when that money's going to come out. And that works so well for me. That was my first big epiphany moment when I discovered Monzo. I think it was about 5 years ago. And that's been working really, really well for me ever since. Even before I had virtual cards for the pots, just being able to separate it out and seeing, right, I cannot touch that money. I can only touch that money for this or that. absolute fucking game changer for me. Would really recommend it. The next thing that I had to really make a change on was overdrafts and credit cards. So I was presented with the concept of an overdraft when I was a student. I didn't really know what it meant. It was presented to me by the bank as basically being free money. I didn't know about interest rates. I didn't know how quickly you had to pay it back. I didn't know how easy it was to spend £1,000 and how difficult it was to pay that back, because I was given £1,000 overdraft as a student. My brain sees that as free money. Most of the time, I'm fine. I'm fully cognizant of the fact that that is borrowing money. But if things get desperate and I have the ADHD impulse to spend money, because impulsive spending is another trait of ADHD, just chasing that hit of dopamine, that sensory seeking, then that overdraft suddenly doesn't seem like such a big deal to just spend 30 quid, 50 quid, 60 quid to buy me something shiny that I didn't really need, but will get me that hit of dopamine that will not last. So I blew through my overdraft in my uni days and took me a very long time to pay back. I was later introduced to the concept of credit cards. Now, I knew that credit cards meant you were borrowing money, but when lenders will give you nearly a £5,000 limit, that disappears so quickly. Money disappears so quickly if you are not paying attention to what you are spending. And I was not paying attention to what I was spending. You're gonna have to bear with me with the cap. So I quickly accumulated a whole load of credit card debt. On top of that, I didn't know how steep interest rates were. I didn't realise that my interest was only 0% for a little while. So when I was being billed 50 to 100 quid every month, and I didn't realise it because I wasn't checking my statements, that threw me for a loop as well. So the bottom line is no overdrafts, no credit cards. I break this rule a little bit. So I have no overdrafts. I will just spend that money. If it's there, I will spend it. So that's a hard no for me. Credit cards I have needed to use because things crop up, whether it's a vet bill or the extortionate dentist bill I had to pay very recently. Some things do need to go on credit cards. I would just caution you to be wary about interest rates and how much you are going to pay back, and do you have a payment plan in place for if you do have to put money on a credit card. I understand that sometimes it's inevitable. Cost of living right now is atrocious. However, try not to put luxuries on there. Try not to put everyday things on there unless you know you can pay it back. My understanding is that a sensible way to use a credit card is to put things like your weekly shop on there and then pay it back immediately, so that you're building your credit score but you're not damaging it. I have my credit limit lowered to as low as it will go. So currently my credit limit is £500. It used to be 5,000, now it is 500, and I feel so much more comfortable with it down at 500 now that I've paid the debt off, because I can quantify £500 just about enough. I'm also aware of how long that would take me to pay back. If I were to max that out, I have a good idea of how many months it would take me to pay that all back, and that's okay. Whereas £5,000, that's such an insane amount of money to me. So no overdrafts. Minimal credit card usage if you absolutely have to, but please avoid that if you are going to follow in my steps. Next, I had to pull my head out of the sand. I used to hate checking my bank account because the amount of money in there was never what I wanted it to be. It was always surprising to me, and I got a little pit of dread in my stomach every single time I opened my app or thought about opening my app, and I hated it. I hated it so much. So what I had to do to get over that was to put myself back in control. I had to be aware of exactly what was coming in, exactly what was going out, when it was going out, what to expect, so I could spot anomalies, so I could get a feel for how much money was actually coming in and out of my bank account, so that I understood it, so that I understood the scale of the purchases I was making. Could I drop 150 quid on clothes every month? No. I couldn't afford that. Took me a while to learn that one. So I had to be in control. What that meant for me was deliberately checking my banking app, but also having a budget, finding a spreadsheet that worked for me, that meant I could see everything very, very clearly. And I love a spreadsheet, so this wasn't as hard as it could have been, but essentially I had the most basic budget spreadsheet ever. I have all my monthly outgoings, I have all my annual outgoings, I have all my savings, and then my transport, my food, and whatever is left over is my spending money. So I knew exactly how much that was going to be per month, per year, and what date that was going to come out if it was a bill. I always get paid on roughly the same day every month, so that keeps that simple. But that budget is something that I check every day, multiple times a day sometimes. I make sure it's up to date. I'm checking it against my banking app as well to make sure that everything's normal, and making sure that I understand how much I'm paying. Am I paying as little as I possibly can be for my bills? Have I got my council tax single person's discount in place? Am I being as efficient as possible with those bills? I am not exaggerating when I say I check my banking app multiple times a day. I like to check that everything is still where it says it is. I like to check that everything is still there, to remind myself about how much money I've got, because I still have that ADHD thing of if I can't see it, it's not there. So I like to remind myself about how much money I have, and actually, can I afford to do a little food splurge at the shop? Not really, no. I need to feel like I'm in control of my money. I don't want to be scared of my money. That is so counterproductive to life for me personally. From that spreadsheet, I am left with an amount that I call my pocket money, which is all my leftover money. It's my fun money. It's my spending money that is not going towards... I need you to fuck off. Good God. The fun money I have is usually somewhere between £400 to £500 a month, including food. So I had to come up with a calculator to work out how much this was weekly based on how many days were left in the month. And I pay myself every Friday depending on how many days are left in the month. Because again, I find big numbers hard to quantify, so I have to really shrink it down. So what I do, one of my pots that I have that doesn't have a card associated with it is just called the safe. That is where all my fun money goes. And I will use the calculator that I've created. I'll count how many days are left in the month, and it calculates how much money I then have if I'm doling it out for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. For example, if I am paid on a Wednesday and I know that I pay myself on a Friday, I will give myself Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days pay out of my safe to tide me over for those 3 days. That includes food and that includes pocket money. So I pull out the total and then I separate out the food amount into my food pot. On the Friday, I will then look at it again. If I've got any left over, I will squirrel that away into a savings pot, because Monzo also do savings pot where you can earn interest on the money that you keep there, or I'll put it in one of my other many pots because I have multiple banking apps. We'll get to that. And then I will pay myself for the next 7 days. So Friday to Friday or Friday to the following Thursday. But I use the calculator to work out how much that should be, because I am bad at maths. So if I can just pop open a spreadsheet on my phone, plug in a number and it goes, yeah, you need to transfer across £120 or something, so be it. That's how I do it. And that is working so well for me, because what would always happen is I would get paid, and within 2 weeks that money was down to like 50 to 100 quid to last me for the last 2-3 weeks, or however quickly I had spent it. So making sure that I was budgeting weekly for myself instead of monthly worked a lot better for me, because again, I cannot quantify big numbers, so I had to break it down really, really, really fucking small for me, because I hate numbers, I hate maths, and my brain is impeded by the autism. The next tip is, if you're going to try and build an emergency fund, which you should, I am aiming to get mine to £1,000 before I then try and save up for 3 months' wages. I have it in an account that you can only withdraw from once a month. So I didn't want one that I could lock completely, because there's always that little part of my brain that was like, if something comes up, I need to be able to access this money. But once a month means I can get at it in an emergency, but also it's locked away for a long time. So I have to be really careful about how often I'm withdrawing. And the money also takes 2-3 days to come through. It's not instant. So I have to think about it before I do any of those things. So having my money in lots of pots that all earn various amounts interest, or for example, my lifetime ISA has the government allowance, where the government will match whatever I put in it up to a certain amount every year, which is not very much. I'm not very good at saving at the moment. Having various bank accounts and not putting all my eggs in one basket in Monzo, if that makes sense, is also beneficial, I think, because I'm very aware that Monzo is an online bank. It doesn't have real people to talk to in person if you really had a problem, but it is it functions the way I need it to function. The last thing I have to come to terms with is that autism and ADHD are disabilities. They put me squarely under the Disability Act, and I have to come to terms with the fact that my brain does not work in the way that everyone else's does, and the world is set up for everyone else's brain and not mine. I need to accept that I am going to have those impulsive thoughts. I am going to struggle to quantify large numbers. I'm going to struggle to budget. I'm going to struggle with maths. I'm not convinced I have dyscalculia, which is like dyslexia for maths. And it's just something you've got to come to terms with, because ADHD will absolutely fuck with your finances if you let it. I highly recommend you do some research on that, because there are lots of traits of ADHD and autism that are not talked about very much and are often joked about, and it can be quite harmful if you find yourself trivializing issues that you shouldn't be trivializing about yourself. That can cause a lot of issues. In conclusion, I use the Monzo pot system. I make sure I'm in control of what my money is doing, so I am always checking my bank account. I have a budget that I keep up to date multiple times a month. I'm checking my budget all the time. I have an app on my phone. I make it as easy as possible for me to access it. I have different savings accounts that I can only access a certain number of times, and I keep the numbers small wherever I can. The unspoken advice here that you're going to hear in lots of other places as well is avoid that impulse spending. Keep stuff in your bag or your wish list or whatever until you're absolutely sure that you want it, that you need it. That will hopefully tone down the impulse spending. I get a lot of anxiety when I spend large amounts of money now, because that brings back those feelings of shit, I've gone over my budget, I'm going to struggle for the next however many weeks. I don't like spending large amounts of money, and that is a good way that I think my brain chemistry has changed in the last few years. But that is how I function, and it's working for me so far. I won't say that I'm perfect with it. Sometimes I do go over my weekly budget. I also have a note in my notes app at the very top where I can see it called self-debts. So if I feel like I need to make a large purchase that I don't have enough money for in the moment, I will borrow from my safe. I will borrow from maybe one of my holiday savings pot on Monzo, which is not like a big deal pot for me. I will make a note that I've borrowed X amount of money from that pot, and next time I get paid or next time I have a little bit extra, I need to put it back in there, and I'm keeping myself accountable that I'm pulling from different pots. I need to put it back, otherwise the system does not work. And also, I know that I'm going to fuck up. I know it. I don't think I've had a single month where it has been entirely smooth sailing with my money, and I just have to keep getting back on the horse. I just have to keep trying again. And because I pay myself weekly, it means that the consequences are less shit. It means I'm struggling for 4 days instead of 4 weeks. So I just have to keep going back to it, because the system does work, but I am allowed to make mistakes within that system because it is built for me to have that wiggle room to make those mistakes. I hope that all made sense. I am not someone you should be taking strict financial advice from. If anything, I think I spent most of this video telling you how shit I am with money, so please listen to that. However, this is what works for me. Hopefully this can help you out if you're having some issues with money. Maybe you want to try some of these things. I strongly recommend trying to feel in control of your money, because it's such a horrible feeling to not feel in control of your money. If you've got any questions or anything you want further clarification on, please do pop a comment down below. I will do my best to answer them. But yeah, this has been something that's been on my mind for a little bit, and it seemed like a lot of you were interested in the poll I did a couple days ago. So I thought I'd get this one out the way just in time for January, when everyone's trying to set new financial goals. But this is what works for me, and I'm really glad I've worked that out. Also, any excuse for a spreadsheet, really. I love my spreadsheet. I redo it all the time, usually just the formatting. But yeah, it's great. I really like how my money works at the moment. I like not feeling scared of it. And I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.